Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'll now call to order tonight's meeting of the Lancaster City Council for September 12th, 2023. A few reminders for tonight's meeting for everyone in the room. This is a great opportunity to silence your cell phones and devices. This meeting and its participants are being recorded and live streamed. During tonight's meeting, there will be several opportunities for public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker per item. As always, make comments from the podium and into the microphone so that you can be heard both in the room and on the recording. Speakers must begin their comments with their name and block of residence for the meeting record. And now, if you're willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Ahmed.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo. Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig. Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And President Beke.
Here. Councilors Craig and Arroyo are excused this evening. Our next item is the approval of the minutes from the August 8th, 2023 meeting. I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilors, do you have any comments on the meeting minutes? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. Do we have any of those this evening, Mr. Harris?
Yes, we do, Madam President. First is Council Resolution 61.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster recognizing Welcoming Week in the City of Lancaster and celebrating the city's continuing designation as a certified welcoming city by the organization Welcoming America.
Thank you. And we already have a motion and a second. We're very excited to celebrate Welcoming Week, obviously, in the City of Lancaster. This evening, we're joined by members of the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, who will speak a little bit about the city's Certified Welcoming Program and Welcoming Week activities. Zaira Falou is here to speak on that, I believe. Is that correct? Great. Zaira, thank you so much for being here this evening. Make that little red button's on.
I think it is now.
Now it is.
Definitely.
Great.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here and surprised to be first in line, but absolutely. We are celebrating Welcoming Week, and it is a joy to celebrate with our community the welcoming of our new neighbors to the City of Lancaster. I will be providing a overview of the state of the Lancaster Certified Welcoming and Language Access. It's my correct. Okay. And again, hello. Lancaster City Council, Mayor Sorash, and guests. My name is Zaira Falou, Language Services Coordinator for the City of Lancaster, and charged with overseeing the Welcoming City designation. I am humbled and grateful to be of service to you tonight and always. It is a pleasure to provide you with this overview of the Lancaster Certified Welcoming Designation and Language Access. To begin, as we all know, the City of Lancaster boasts a long welcoming history of more than 300 years. In 2019, the City of Lancaster was formally designated as a Certified Welcoming City, first in Pennsylvania. And this happened by Welcoming America. In 2022, the City of Lancaster was recertified as a Certified Welcoming City among 18 other cities in the nation. And I am only reviewing these as there might be someone in the within our guests that might not know this information. Welcoming America praised the City of Lancaster partners for the numerous resources available for our new neighbors. Among other highlights were the new Department of Neighborhood Engagement, Lancaster City as a trauma-informed community, and the Police Department Community Engagement Office and social workers. Okay, and if we could move the slides back, maybe one more slide. Thank you. And so what am I talking about, a certified welcoming city, or who grants such designation? Certified Welcoming is a program created by the national nonprofit Welcoming America, which assesses governments on their efforts to include and welcome immigrants for a prosperous and successful community. The Welcoming Standard is a comprehensive socioeconomic guide, or if you want to call it a roadmap, for building welcoming communities that are prosperous and inclusive to all, including immigrants and refugees. The Welcoming Standard utilizes 7 framework areas for the socioeconomic success of our new neighbor. The framework areas are listed on the slide: civic engagement, connected communities, economic development, education, equitable access, government and community leadership. And just to highlight that it was changed this past year, it used to be only government, now is including community leadership, as the requirements include the assessment of community partners. And finally, our safe communities. Within the 7 framework areas are about 20 to 24 criteria questions per framework area to be completed, assessing the availability and accessibility of resources for the success of our new neighbors. And if we can move the slide, thank you. Just to understand that the success of our new neighbors is important to us, as these new families become professionals, business owners, homeowners, educators, voters, and an integral part of our local community, bringing prosperity and a bright future for our city. The graphic now reflects the rigorous scoring process for each framework area as it was assessed this past 2022. The second to last column reflects our exceeding score in comparison to other certified welcoming communities, making Lancaster stand out nationally. If we continue for the next slide, this graph actually shows our growth since 2019 to 2022. This graph reflects the growth of our welcoming work despite a global pandemic that actually paralyzed welcoming work in many other communities. And Lancaster continued to move forward in welcoming work. Next slide, please. Certified welcoming could not happen without our community partners. The Certified Welcoming designation requires assessment of partner organizations, community resources, and programs. More than 40 local partners participated in the assessment. And again, thank you, Lancaster City partners, for welcoming our new neighbors to the city of Lancaster. And there's part of all the partners. There's way more partners that I was not able to add to the slide. Next slide, please. And in 2022, we recertified under the designation Welcoming Standard 1.0, which was revamped to be the Certified Welcoming Star Designation 2.0. This Welcoming Star designation allows places to achieve 1 to 5-star designations for their welcoming efforts, includes a set of criteria tailored to each star designation that must be met. Each star designation builds upon the previous star. Certified Welcoming Stars ensure that governments have a chance to achieve the designation of Certified Welcoming while also providing pathways to advance their welcoming work and grow capacity. Next slide, please. As it currently stands, the city of Lancaster complies with the 2-star designation in the welcoming standard. It is our goal to reach the 5-star standard, welcoming and promoting advocacy at the local and the state level. Next slide, please. There are 2 areas of opportunity in government and community leadership and safe communities. In response to this opportunity, the City of Lancaster will be convening and facilitating conversations with welcoming city partners on a quarterly basis to continue to move this work forward. Next slide, please. And in accordance also with our welcoming city certification, Language Access continues to provide services to our city residents. As of 2023, the Propio One app was launched. We developed and launched a city staff language access resource portal. I'm very excited to announce that. The portal is active and has resources such as how to troubleshoot your Propio One or how to use it, how to download it. It includes information on how to work with interpreters, videos, translation, and much more. As of today, we have translated 46,574 words, majority to Spanish, but there have been many documents in Swahili as well, and developed the Hive language access request procedure, which is an electronic form of, centralized form of processing language access requests. In case Saida is not here, others can serve as well. Next slide, please. And here are our Propio analytics. As we can see, our city staff continues to use the application. It continues to grow in usage. Our rates are wonderful. And the top languages are Spanish, Swahili, and Arabic. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Next slide. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today.
Zaira, thank you so much for your presentation and your work and continued efforts so that we can maintain our welcoming certification. I'm curious if there's anything that you can just tell us a little bit more about those quarterly meetings with partners. Who's involved with those and what are some outcomes that you hope to achieve in that time? Absolutely. As of now, we're continuing to coordinate these meetings. We don't have a set date yet. The Department of Neighborhood Engagement is coordinating the meetings with local partners. And the objective is to create a vision for our certified welcoming city and also address areas of opportunity within the certification. Okay. Thank you very much. Comments or questions from council for Zaira or regarding the resolution on the table?
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
I just wanted to thank you, Zaira, and thank you the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, as well as our many partners, Church World Service, Islamic Center of Lancaster, as well as many others. And I just wanted to commend you guys on the work that you're doing with language access. And Welcome Week has already been so fun this week, and I'm excited to continue to work with you guys on the road ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments from council? I will make mention, because it is a Welcoming Week certification, there are a number of upcoming events and things that have already happened since we're in the middle of Welcoming Week right now. And you can learn a little bit more about what those are at thecityoflancaster.gov/welcome. I will take any comments from the public on the resolution. Yeah.
My name is Matt Johnson, 200 block of North Mulberry Street,
Good evening.
and
Thank you.
from CWS. I'm actually representing Guamucho Caracasi, who is the immigrant and refugee community organizer for CWS, who is happy to report that he has some time off for paternity leave. So that's a really exciting thing that he said I could share. But I wanted to recount real quickly the way that Welcome has integrated into our work and the way that the city government has prioritized the voices of immigrants and refugees in the community. We were asked by the planning committee, not exactly always where you would expect there to be heavy emphasis on outreach, to help with comprehensive plan feedback. We had 3 meetings with the Arabic-speaking community, the Swahili and Kinyarwanda speaking community, and the Haitian Creole speaking community that were attended by almost 85 people. Each one, we solicited as much feedback as we could on all kinds of things, from parks to streets to housing and so forth. And the only constant among all of these communities is that people felt like Lancaster was a welcoming place to be. They said that the people here were nice, welcoming, that the government was accessible, that when they needed something, they knew where to reach out, and they felt that people actually cared. And that's, you know as politicians, you know as elected officials, that no room of people are ever in agreement about anything, and that was the common theme in every time. People said, let's fix parking, let's find more affordable housing, let's have more cultural celebrations, but the idea that Lancaster is welcoming was on everybody's mind every time that we talk to people, and I think that's a lot to do with this. The other thing I want to say about the welcoming certification that makes our lives easier as a resettlement agency is that it's not for show. It's not for the designation, it's not a Michelin star restaurant review, it's meaningful change that makes city government, but also city communities step up and make the community welcoming for everyone. As when the process was started, I think the belief was if you can make city government accessible for the newest neighbor, someone that's arriving here from a completely different location, you can make it accessible for anybody in the city. And I think that's been achieved at tenfold. So we look forward to it. We see it every single day, whether it's police, fire. Recently, we had a community engagement event with some new neighbors running around with fire hats on given to them by the firefighters. We've had folks in every department come to us and know how to come to us, because sometimes you think, well, why don't people come and talk to us when they want to talk about immigration, new neighbors? And now they have the ability to do that, they have the platform to do that, and they have the will to do that because of this initiative. So we just want to say thank you, and on behalf of Guamucho and from the entire New Neighbor community, we really appreciate this, and we're at your service for any future star designations. Let's get that 5 stars.
Thank you very much. Further comments from the public on the resolution? Good evening.
Good evening, Council President Sean Demensick, 400 block of Fremont Street. Regarding Welcome Week, I wanted to say I noted that in Zyra's presentation, the weakest points in Welcoming Week were interactions with local government and safe communities, which included points about interactions with the police. Very glad for all that we do to help immigrants, especially those just coming from abroad. I think that's excellent work. I hope it continues, and I'm appreciative of the work that Zyra and many others are doing for that. However, I think it's important to note that there are immigrants who don't have homes, immigrants who don't have money, and those I do not believe feel welcome at all. I would also invite those present in the room who sometimes just stay for the celebratory pats on the back and speeches at the beginning of council to stay for maybe 10 or 15 minutes longer to hear many public comments from people in the city who have watched the police terrorize, steal, harass people who are living in our parks, many of them immigrants, and to put in contrast some of the praiseworthy words we say about what Lancaster wants to be in terms of welcoming its neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demensick. Further comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
and President Baker.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Director Carrasco and Zaira, I do have 2 copies of this resolution that are fit for presentation, if you'd like to present them to your partner organizations. And I'll allow you to take the lead in doing that. Yes. BJ will direct you where you'd like to be. If you'd give us just a moment for some photos. All right, our next item under proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition this evening, we have resolution number 62. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster recognizing September 15, 2023 through October 15, 2023 as Hispanic Heritage Month and encouraging awareness among the citizens of Lancaster of the important contributions from the people of Latino descent.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on resolution number 62. Councilor Diaz.
Thank you, President. The Hispanic Heritage Month, observed nationally from September 15 to October 15, holds a special significance in Lancaster City. During this time, we come together to honor the heritage and achievements of our Hispanic residents, who represents a mosaic of culture, tradition, and experience from across Latin America, Caribbean, Spain, and beyond. In Lancaster City, we embrace the values and diversity, recognizing our Hispanic residents that have made valuable contributions to various facets of our city's life. Whether it be in the fields of art, music, cuisine, entrepreneurship, education, or public service. Their influence can be seen and felt throughout our vibrant streets. My family is part of a history of the city of Lancaster. My aunt, La Pachanga, was well known in the community, always helping others. And also, she always fed the police for some reason. I don't know why. As we embark on this journey of celebration and reflection, let's honor the past and look forward, where our shared culture's diversity continues to enrich the vibrant tapestry of Lancaster City. Together, we will celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. The event will be September 30th in Ben Park, and I believe that starts at 12 to 5, if I'm not mistaken. And that's where they will be honoring an achievement award for an individual that's significant impact of Lancaster City Hispanic communities. And if Milsey would like to say something, or no? Okay. Well, I would like to then, I guess we go through the votes.
We did that?
Okay. So I'd like to present that we have here Sarita. She is the president of the Dominican Association of Lancaster.
We'll quickly go through the formality of voting.
Go ahead.
But stand by. And thank you for mentioning the celebration on the 30th. Are there any other council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public on the resolution? No. Hearing none, Mr. Harris, let's make it official.
Mr. Met,
Aye.
Mr. Cleese,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Ms. Walsh,
Aye.
President Bake.
Aye. Thank you. Now we can make it official.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Harris, do we have any further proclamations, honors, awards, or resolutions of recognition this evening?
We do not.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next part of the agenda. I do understand that some of you may have been here just for those items. If you'd like to step out, you can do so at this time. You may stay as well, and we welcome you to do so. The next item on the agenda is public comment. These are reserved for citizens who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting to request an opportunity to speak and address council. Just as a reminder, the duration of those comments is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Please make your comments at the podium with the microphone so that you can be heard in the room and on the recording of the meeting, and begin with your name and block of residence for our record. Mr. Harris, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do, Madam President.
Okay.
First is Tyrus Twine.
Mr. Twine, good evening.
Good evening. It is a great privilege to be able to speak with you, and I thank you for this opportunity.
I'm going to just have you state your name and your block of residence for the record, and then go right ahead.
My name is Tyrus Twine. I'm a resident of New Holland, Pennsylvania, and a representative of Abolish Abortion, PA. But above all, I am an ambassador of the Lord Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, ruler of all the earth. In his sovereign will and providence, he has raised you up as civil servants. Chief among your responsibilities is to do justice for those under your care. Therefore, to turn a blind eye to the Holocaust that is so prevalent in our nation is to deny your God-given responsibility. Abortion, the murder of unborn babies, is a high-handed sin. To slaughter the most vulnerable among us is to kindle God's holy wrath, for he hates those who shed innocent blood. Proverbs 6, verse 16 through 17. In 2022, a Planned Parenthood was open to the public on Manor Street of this fair city. Whether they performed the abortion procedures themselves, refer them to other facilities, or merely give pills that will starve the baby to death in the womb, they all share a measure of guilt in the death of a child. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was an outspoken racist who referred to black people as reckless breeders and human weeds. As an African American, I know that abortion affects my people more than any other ethnic group in our nation. If you truly care for black lives, or the lives for any human, for all matter equally, you will immediately put bills in place that will assure equal protection for the unborn from the moment of fertilization and equal just penalties for those that would take infant lives. Despite the evil of this sin, it is not beyond God's immeasurable grace to forgive. Repent of your inaction against this slaughter, for though God would be just in pouring out his wrath upon you for eternity in hell for all your sins, he has offered a way of escape through Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, who is fully God, fully man, born of the Virgin Mary, lived a sinless life and died on the cross bearing the wrath of God for the sins of his people, including the sin of abortion. He paid the price in full for our sins, and then he died. But 3 days later, he rose again from the dead as God's declaration that his sacrifice satisfied the justice of God. He is now seated at the right hand of the Father, calling for all to repent and believe in him for salvation, the forgiveness of sins, and eternal life. Be wise, civil rulers. Turn to Christ in saving faith, and then bear fruit in keeping with repentance by protecting the babies in the wombs of our community. Please welcome our unborn neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twine. Mr. Harris, do we have further public comment this evening?
We do, Madam President. Next is Joel Saint.
Great. Mr. Saint, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Joel Saint. Excuse me, I'm a pastor, and I live in Bowmansville, Pennsylvania. It's great to be with you tonight. I want to share a few comments from the original lawgiver, if you will, Moses, and then make a few points from that. From Moses, you shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. You shall not follow a crowd to do evil. You shall not, nor shall you testify in a dispute, so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. You shall not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute. You shall not pervert the judgment of the poor in your dispute. Keep yourself far from a false matter. Do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. And you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. All this from the book of Exodus, from Moses as inspired by the Holy Spirit. Just a few points. First of all, I certainly agree, and second, what my friend Tyrus said earlier this evening. We've heard an awful lot about being welcoming tonight, which is a wonderful word, being welcoming. How about if we welcome those who never see the light of day, those unborn who are subject to being starved to death prior to their birth, or even worse? Just a few points. We're told these things. Don't take a bribe, because we have a tendency, a proclivity to do exactly these types of things. We wouldn't be told by Moses here through the Holy Spirit not to take a bribe, unless that would be constantly a temptation. That's number one. Number two, we tend to say that we are on the side of the poor. So let me ask, who is more poor? Who has less resources? Who has less possibilities? And who has less protection than an unborn child? Who has less? Number three, what is justice? We say that a woman has a right to her own body, but no one was saying that during COVID. Then it was, wear this face cloth, stay 6 feet apart, take this poison directly into your system so you could lose, or else you could lose your job or your ability to do business or even travel. Where was my body, my choice then? One of the chief sins that Christ spoke of was the sin of hypocrisy. Why was this? In part because
30 seconds.
Excuse me?
30 seconds. Just
Thank
so
you.
know. Thank you.
Yeah, because once you embrace hypocrisy, then evil becomes worse because now it can masquerade as good. That's the problem with it. Think about it. Without hypocrisy, evil has to present itself as evil. Listen, we know that we are killing babies. We don't care. Get over it. But under hypocrisy, it's called freedom to choose. If you as a city council will condone the killing of babies, then at least call it what it actually is.
Mr. Saint, if you could wrap up, you've gone over 3 minutes.
Thank you. I got 5 seconds. Thank you.
That's it?
Call it what it is, the killing of babies. That is all. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, is there further public comment this evening?
Yes, there is, Madam President. Next to Sean Demensick.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Demensick again.
Good evening, Sean Demensick, yes, 400 block Fremont Street. In March of 2021, this council changed the park laws. Concerns were raised at that time that the homeless would have nowhere to go. Those concerns were dismissed, and of the councilors who were there at that time, Councilors Arroyo, Bakay, Craig, and Diaz all voted to adopt this new city code, which was pushed by the mayor's administration. Between then and August 2022, several homeless citizens were issued criminal citations for the crime of sleeping. When I learned this, I began complaining to the council. That was exactly 1 year ago. I have made 13 public comments on the matter and have had even more meetings, including at least one with each councilor, the mayor's office, and many city officials. In that time, I dealt with ignored emails, false promises, absurd excuses, especially the lie that providing welfare services and bickering with the county about funding amounts justifies violating human rights. What violations? 3 weeks ago, the police performed an impromptu sweep of Culleton at 4 a.m., forcing the homeless to flee and hide. I must ask, was this equitable? 2 weeks ago, a pregnant homeless woman was ordered to take down her tent in the park. Was this inclusive? And just yesterday, During Welcoming Week, the police performed another sweep, stealing and trashing the unattended possessions of our poorest neighbors. Is this one of Welcoming Week's activities? Who is responsible for this injustice? When confronted, the police always point to the legislation of the city code. When council is confronted, they say the issue is too complicated to legislate without the administration's support. When the mayor is confronted, she says that the law is on the books and we must trust the discretion of her police. And everyone says that county is to blame, not them. This dishonest and cowardly passing the buck is the very definition of a tyrannical bureaucracy. Thankfully, there is hope because everyone involved has a soul and a conscience,
30
which can
seconds.
choose between right and wrong, between good and evil, between the love of God and the love of power. Madam Mayor, you can end this cruelty overnight with a single order from your desk. Council President, you can permanently protect the rights of the homeless within a few months by finally putting the right to rest on council agenda. In the name of Jesus, who was himself poor and homeless, I beg you both, stop oppressing the homeless.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, are there further public comments this evening?
Yes, Madam President. Next is Dave Castorella.
Thank you. Mr. Castorella, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oop, thank you very much. Maurice, your file.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, go right ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Costarella, 900 block of First Street, Lancaster. During the winter, I do a project that I called My People on the Street that through December through April, 3 nights after the shelters are open and everybody that's going to be sleeping on the streets, I go out at 9:30 and I make sure they have everything, including something to eat, clothing, sleeping bags, and a little bit of compassion and see what's needed. And after that stopped in April, I started a project called My People Clean Up, where I give them a stipend, give certain people a stipend to clean a park every day, 7 days a week. And we're doing it at 5 locations, 4 parks and 3 blocks of Water Street. And the transformation in the cleaners on a human level has been amazing. The people around them, these are all homeless people. The people around them are being more tidy and more cleaner, and the parks are looking beautiful as long as it's not overcrowded in that area, but they keep it up. It's working so well that Lancaster County Food Hub just partnered with the project because they saw the results, and they love the way the people that they deal with are so much better mentally and productively and being able to make choices. And they also love that the community can use the parks. So that's working. But what I really wanted to do with this, and what we just did, I wanted to prove that homelessness is manageable. And these are all human beings. And if you take care of an area, give them an area, they will protect it, they will police it, and they will be glad to be with the community. Colleton Park, we just proved that. The sheet of paper is about Michelle, God's little hot mess. She started cleaning that in April.
30 seconds.
And within a month, people are calling, hey, what's going on? Why is the park usable? Why are people nice? Why? It's because Michelle started cleaning. She got treated like a human being, and it worked. And then we have Mr. Amos Stoff, who's the head of SOE, the director of, that saw this was working and leaned in. And then their community.
That was 3 minutes, if you could just.
That's already?
Thought, yes.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Goes fast.
That was fun.
If you want to just, final thought, if you have anything else you needed to wrap up, go right ahead.
You've got the gist of it. Thanks for everything.
I appreciate you handing us this too. Thank you. Mr. Harris, are there further public comments this evening?
Yes, Madam President. Next is Milan Konov.
Milan. Great. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Milan Konev. I live in Hightspire, Pennsylvania. I've lived in Lancaster in the city here for the last 10 years, on and off in different places. I went to Millersville 10 years ago. I love the city. Lancaster, to me, is very homey. It's the place where I want to be and a place I care a lot about. To explain myself a little bit, I'm an outreach worker. I work alongside the homeless population every day. I work for a nonprofit here in the county. And I could speak on a lot of different topics and experiences from the job that I do day to day, and talk on a lot of different points. But today I want to focus on some of the things I've already brought up today, including the police responses to some of the homelessness, and those experiencing homelessness around different areas of the city, particularly Colleton Park, which we've heard recently has had these sweeps going on. And I'll say in my job, I've been doing this almost 2 years now here around the city, and these sweeps are not unusual, or it's not that they don't happen prior, but more and more it becomes harder to work with the folks that are dealing with it and having to explain to them what's going on, because there's not a lot of humanity, there's not a lot of discretion, and there's not a lot of kindness thrown around when these interactions are happening. These sweeps happen, for example, at Colleton Park, like we heard from others speaking tonight. And when this happens, these aren't just their belongings that we might not see a lot of value in, but it's truly everything that these people own. If you can imagine having everything you own being picked up by a stranger and thrown into a garbage can when you are not around, it can really set you back, including for the community partners that are working with these folks, like myself, like Dave, or others that are helping them financially, all these different things that are happening around the city. We can give out sleeping bags, we can help people get IDs and get ducks in a row, as they say, to help move their situations forward, but it doesn't help when all those things go missing in a week because the cops had to come through and throw them away. There's discretion that needs to be used because there are no permanent solutions currently available for these people. I have not been able to make a true shelter referral in over a year at this point, and when I look at all the different avenues and resources available, they're there to support, but there is no housing right now. There is no shelter. So what are we going to do with these folks? I said to the cops, recently as well, this is a layman's way to put it, you take all these things away, you tell these folks to leave, we all know what's going to happen. In 10 or 15 minutes after the cops leave and vacate the area, those folks grab what they have left, they come back to the park and they set camp back up because they don't want to end up in people's yards. They don't want to be bothered in the middle of the street or on a street corner, and they want to feel safe. They want to feel like they have their own space.
30 seconds.
We keep taking that away from them. We keep pushing them away. When they come back after those 10 or 15 minutes after the cops are gone, they're in the same situation they're in, except now they don't have a sleeping bag, or now they don't have their shoes. Now their wallet's missing. It makes it harder to work with them, work for them, and it makes it harder for the city to feel like it's doing the right thing for these people and by these people. Until there are further solutions, like the housing crisis that we're dealing with is being resolved, that's going to take time. We need to look at things creatively now, and you look at the discretion that we're using now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, do we have further public comment?
Yes, next is Carol Kirkner.
Carol, good evening.
Good evening. Carol Kurtner on the 200 block of Prospect Street. I frequent Colleton Park with my dog Toby and my grandson. We encounter many types of people from all walks of life. On Saturday, I received a letter from one of them. Dear Carol, I am so grateful and appreciative for remembering me at my most hard time. I am again saying thank you. The day I received your postcard, I had a group discussion, and the conversation was some people don't have any emergency contact. They don't have any family members. I raised my hand and said, I am one of them. Then in the afternoon, your postcard was handed over to me, and my counselor said, Abdul, somebody has remembered you. I was so happy, and you made my day. Again, thank you. This is one gentleman in Colleton Park, thanks to Amos of So We and Milan of Tenfold, that helped to better his life. And there are many more people like this gentleman. Yesterday, there was an incident. A woman was in the park. There was a backpack beside her. The police came in. She clearly asked them, please do not take this backpack. It's my friend's. Later in the afternoon when I went to the park, Michelle said to me, Carol, they took my backpack. In my backpack was all my paperwork and my ID. I have nothing left. What is this? Is it a power trip? Is it saying your lives don't matter? We have to do better for these people. Is it because they're dirty? Maybe they didn't wash their hair that day. Maybe they didn't put on their makeup. Don't they have a right to be in that park, just like every single person in this room? So I'm just asking you to please, let's rally and help these folks. They need to know that we are here for them and understand compassion and kindness. I'm going to end with a quote, and I just hope it resonates with all of you. Don't try to drive the homeless into places we find suitable. Help them survive in places they find suitable. We think sometimes that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is the greatest poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Mr. Harris, are there further comments this evening?
Yes, next is Susie Gomez.
Ms. Gomez, good evening.
Good evening, guys. Susie Gomez, 115 North Reservoir Street, Lancaster. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in. I would like to first say this is not a discussion or debate. It's a reminder that we exist. Before Mayor Gray passed the baton to Srirachi, I personally thanked him for finally acknowledging historic takeovers and putting up this icon plaque of Stephen Smith, who funded every bank in Pennsylvania as an African Black leader. He was one of the richest men in America, maybe one of 5. Whether he did it to save his soul, he showed me he had a conscience in the end. Taxes are paid out on everyone's paycheck to be distributed according to federal, state, local, city, and city again, and all other shenanigans that are withheld from hardworking citizens. Here, working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet for their families. Utility bills are rising to compensate fallouts that the city is responsible for. Property taxes, income taxes are a target as rents climb at an all-time high, and we are left with a housing market that is not working in our favor. Funding is provided from a federal level and a state level for the people and programs were put in place for those who qualify to reach their highest potential in a class citizenship for centuries. This is nothing new. The people pay your salaries, and we expect to have a future for our children, families, and community. What we see with the naked eye does not look right. Our livelihoods are at stake, and our streets are clearly being neglected. From southeast to the north, not to mention the outsiders that are making decisions on our hard-earned dollars. So as we continue to work harder, we need you guys to do the same, not smarter. Data statistics are screaming in our faces, and the disrespect in the city with the postmaster down-talking her employees and poor service downtown is becoming a nuisance. There are no unskilled workers in the city of Lancaster. We need leaders who we can trust to take our money and work with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Mr. Harris, is there further public comment this evening?
Yes, next is Irene Grievous.
Thank you. Ms. Grievous, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Irene Grievous. I'm on the 400 block of West End Avenue. Being the welcoming week, I, as an immigrant, my parents immigrated here from 50 years ago. My parents saw discrimination. They felt discrimination. They've been discriminated upon because they were different. And here I am, 50 years later, although I don't dress the same as my parents did, I'm different. And things really haven't changed much from 50 years ago to where we are now. I'm feeling the same discrimination my parents felt 50 years ago. And I promised myself and my parents that if I ever get to the level that I can help someone else in need for housing, for food, for anything, that I will continue what my parents, my dear parents, that I know they're looking down on me proudly, yet for that help, it's taken housing away from the most vulnerable people that needed it. As most of you already know, it's been 2 years on the 900 block of Manor Street on a housing issue that has been resolved, and yet the city has made it impossible for me to maintain my property and have family living in there. In fact, it did the opposite. It displaced at least 3 family members from living in that home that's fully functional. So we're in a housing crisis, and yet we're taking housing away. How is this fair? And where is the equality, inclusion, without politics, influence, and power for personal enrichment? All at the same time, while I get the city contractors for enrichment wanting to buy my properties. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grievous. Mr. Harris, is there further public comment this evening?
Yes, next is Monica Domensik.
Ms. Domensik, good evening.
Good evening. Monica Domensik, 400 block, Fremont. Good evening. I want to note, as a few others have, the condition of the homeless in our city, who are our brothers and sisters, and who we frequently on a daily basis walk by with total avoidance, and at least internally, even if we acknowledge for a moment, get to walk to our own homes and our own beautiful houses with privacy and locks and beds. And I don't know if anyone here does not have those things, but I just know that many of us are extremely abundant in our ownership. As a few have noted, there was a sweep yesterday, and there have been in many parks in the city, and particularly around possessions, as Milan noted earlier. This is all that these people own, and when it's taken from them, those are all their possessions. If we were to imagine trying to carry just our bed and our wardrobe, if we were just take a moment to think about our own wardrobes, I know mine is larger than it should be, and if I were to carry that, the physical weight, and then if that were just to be taken in a moment, how much that would be, that's only one area of our life. Imagine if our ID, everything else was stripped from us. Similarly, these are a waste of extremely important tools of many programs around the city. Oftentimes, the city and other powers speak that these resources are enough, that the programs helping them, Social Security, et cetera, is enough to sustain these people, but a lot of those resources are being thrown away, as have been noted. I literally watched a trash truck drive away with a lot of resources yesterday. On that note, there are many of us in this room and many people in Lancaster County, especially as Christians, and I believe that we are convicted as Christians that we are required to help those in need. We are required to do the works of mercy, shelter those who are homeless, clothe those who are naked. This is made impossible if those people are not allowed sheltered, are not allowed dignity. For these parks, specifically Culloden, I have my son who has been very vocal and another one on the way, and I still feel extremely comfortable going to the park in my neighborhood across my street. This has not been stopped by the fact that the police have been less enforcing that the last 2 years. Thank you. And I will still plan on going there. I'm a homeowner, I'm a mother. Do not use me as an excuse that this park is unsafe for everybody or that it's not accessible for everybody. This should be for those who need it most, who need that as shelter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, are there any further public comments this evening?
There are not, Madam President.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank all of the speakers here this evening for bringing these matters to our attention. The next item on our agenda this evening are reports requested by council. We do appear to have one of those reports this evening. It is from the Department of Public Works, and it's it regards fall tree leaf collection. I believe Director Campbell is here for that. And as we get set up on that presentation, we'll allow folks to exit who would like to do so. Director Campbell, thank you for being here this evening. Members of council, I do believe that this presentation was part of the packet that you received from Mr. Harris, if you're looking for that, and it's also on the screen in front of you. Great, thank you.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. It is getting to be that season again where we need to address how to clean the streets of leaves, and later on in the season, we'll be dealing with issues related to snow. I felt it was very important to come to City Council and to come to the public at this moment to describe what our process is, what the ordinance is, and what we are doing to be able to keep the streets clean, not only within that ordinance, but also within the confines of a budget that is trying to be conscientious of how we use our resources. So if I could have the next slide. So I'm not going to read all the words, but there's a lot of information here. The code regarding leaf collection was one that was adopted in August of 2000, so more than 22 years ago, where leaves can be swept from the public sidewalk to the gutters, but leaves may not be swept from private property to the public right-of-way. We contracted collection of bagged waste, and our entire streets staff, which usually takes care of paving and other kinds of services, would stop doing their work and collect leaves in the city streets from October 15th to December 31st. Time off was restricted and people were not available for other work. From September through the end of October, bagged yard waste and leaves are collected by the trash hauler every other week, and in November and December, they are collected every week curbside. Residents by this ordinance are required to bag their leaves from their yard or sidewalk and not put them in the public right-of-way, or not in the public right-of-way. Yard waste bags are provided free to the citizens of the city of Lancaster, which is something that's rare in this area. Most municipalities charge people for yard waste bags. We provide them free to everyone in the city. And city staff is responsible for leaves that do fall into the street. So if there are leaves that fall from the trees directly into the street, Anything within the public right-of-way gets cleaned by Public Works, and anything that's in the private yards gets bagged and gets picked up by the trash haulers. Next slide. Past practices prior to 2022 that were in conflict with the ordinance, which is part of what created some of the confusion over the last year or two. Past practices included residents piling leaves from their property onto the street. Now, understandably, often this is happening in places where people have very, very large yards, and they would rake their leaves from their yards directly into the street. City staff cleaning up large piles of leaves. In some of these areas, staff would be on the same street for 3 to 4 days in a week in order to clean the leaves that were put there either inadvertently or not supposed to be put there. And last but not least, landscape companies often were piling leaves from parking lots and grassy areas onto the street for city staff to pick up. This built an expectation that the city is going to pick up all leaves, even from the private property areas. Next slide. What changed? In 2022, which was in a couple years into the COVID virus, the city started to do self-performing of paving work, which continued until December 24th of that year. Self-performing meant that we did several things. We were able to pave more streets at a lower cost. We were able to build up the professional acumen and the ability of the staff to be able to do the work, and we created greater pride in the people of the city of Lancaster. But most importantly, in terms of a business model, being able to pave almost 35 to 40% more streets per year by doing self-performance than contracting it out. The changes to leaf collection were that a single operator leaf truck was sent in front of each sweeper to pick up leaves in the street ahead of street sweepers in the conventional manner. Otherwise, we attempted to follow the ordinance as written, but we did not message the operational change. So the expectation was still there that people would rake their leaves into the street from their yards, and the expectation was, since I had done it in the past, I should be able to do it in the future. Residents continued to pile the leaves, creating issues for collection and street sweeping. The remedy that we exercised last year was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the street staff stopped the street paving, et cetera, work that they were doing, and collected leaves in the northwest and around State Street and in the annex areas of the city to pick up the piles that were placed on the street from residents. So we do have that sense that we are responsible to ensure that the streets stay clear as much as practical. Because these leaves had been put there, even though it was in violation of the ordinance, we still have the responsibility to do that work. What it did mean was that other work was not getting done, and it was costly because of the operations involved in taking care of those leaves. Next slide. So at what cost was this? The opportunity cost. Each day we send street staff to collect leaves costs approximately $8,600. And there were approximately 50 leaf collection days between September and the end of December. If we were to divert the street staff for 10 of those days to follow the previously accepted practices in violation of the ordinance, that cost the city approximately $86,000, not including the value of streets not paved. If we were to divert all of November and December, it would cost the city approximately $260,000. Now, what we did last year was, again, some streets did not get done, some paving work did not get done because we diverted people from their assigned and scheduled responsibilities to take care of the leaves. It also reduces the amount of streets that can be paved by anywhere from 4 to 6 blocks over the course of our scheduled year, and leaves collected by the city are stored until they can be hauled to a compost facility at additional cost in staff time and equipment to use the leaf collection and disposal. Cost savings by following the ordinance and by tweaking our practices so that we can best accommodate these needs. Leaves collected in bags by trash hauler are transported directly to the compost facility, reducing the amount of material that is handled. It means that we avoid 2 or 3 steps in our staff having to handle the bags and handle the leaves, collecting them, storing them, putting them one place, taking them to another place, and then dumping them off. The leaf collection that is collected in bags by the trash hauler is already built into the trash contract that we're already paying for. So our solid waste fees are already paying for people to pick up the trash bags that have yard waste in them, which include all the leaves as much as possible. We're already paying for that in the contract. And anywhere from $86,000 to $260,000 plus handling can be saved, and 4 to 6 more blocks paved, weather permitting, by adhering to the leaf ordinance and staying in line with those practices. Next. So moving forward into the fall of 2023, we're reminding people that leaves from your yard are not to be pushed into the street. This is a flyer, and this messaging went into the bills back in February at the beginning of the season. They're being repeated. The flyer that you see on the right is accompanying all people's solid waste bills in the month of September. So it also shows the yard waste pickup days in September through December. And we remind people that leaf bags are free, available to all people in the city of Lancaster, as many bags as you need for removing the leaves from your private property. Leaf trucks will still be sent out in addition to the street sweepers to the extent practical, but we continue to very strongly encourage residents to bag their leaves. The messaging is going out on social media and a variety of other arenas as well, so that people are aware that this is what we need and this is what is consistent with the ordinance. Flyers have been made in both English and Spanish and are included in the trash bill. The communications team pushes it out, and yard waste bags are available free of cost in the following city facilities. Next slide. The 5 key city facilities where you can go and pick up yard waste bags are the recycling drop-off center that most people are familiar with on New Holland Avenue, City Hall during office hours, the Treasury office over at the police station, the Operations Center on 225 Riverside Avenue, and a new location, the Water Department at 150 Pitney Road. We believe that is closer to many of the people in the annex areas that have need for these bags as well. The only thing that will be asked of you is to leave your name so that we are able to try to record that we are providing the bags to city residents and have some estimation of which bags are needed in which areas for planning in the future. Next. So the last thing that I just want to reemphasize, and I know that it often is inconvenient and no one likes to be told that they need to do something perhaps differently that they've done in the past, but it is a cost savings to both the solid waste and the streets budget. And as we know from not only last year's budget exercise, but this year's budget exercise, where we are trying to be very conscientious of where we spend our money and how. We don't want to be spending money where the ordinance does not require us to, especially when it's already incorporated in our trash contract and we have the provisions to be able to take care of it otherwise. It avoids increases in solid waste rates by being able to reduce the cost of, or to not further increase the cost of solid waste removal. It ensures that these leaves go to composting, which is a much cleaner leaf source. So the leaves that are scraped up from the street are also often filled with the trash and other debris of the street. And so they are not as good of composting material as those leaves that are put in bags or that are collected in cleaner piles on the side of the street. So we wish that as much as possible, use the bags so that we have cleaner leaves for composting. And it will also allow us to continue our increased paving within the city on the schedules that we have planned and try to ensure that we are aggressively addressing the paving needs of the city. Thank you very much.
Mr. Campbell, thank you very much. Just one point of clarification, because it wasn't explicitly mentioned. The public right-of-way includes the streets, the sidewalks, and the bike lanes, is that correct?
That is correct.
So leaves that fall directly into the bike lanes would be removed by the city,
That
but
is correct.
residents should not push their leaves or put their leaves in the bike lanes.
That is correct.
Great,
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Council President, if I may.
Councilman Ahmed.
Thank you for the presentation, Director Campbell. One question, with the neighborhood engagement, are we going to be working with the various neighborhood groups like SOE or Northeast Neighbors United to help them also get the message out to folks in those areas?
There's a variety of outreach that is going on. I will confess that we haven't reached out as much as we could to some of these community organizations. That's kind of what's going on as we speak, rather than before this particular piece, but the messaging by mail in previous bills and flyers and on social media has already begun elsewhere.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the director from the council?
Council President.
Councilor Walsh.
Director Campbell, thank you for the presentation. It's really helpful to see the cost savings of these programs if they're done correctly. I just have one question, and it relates sort of with Councilmember Ahmad's as well. With renters in the city who don't receive the trash bills but are also responsible for landscaping, is there any way that when you're working through communication strategies with community groups to keep that in mind? Because what I fear is that even if a renter is responsible, maybe the messaging won't be passed down by a landlord. And
I think that's a very wise distinction. I do want to say that in terms of picking up the bags, so if a renter is doing yard work, et cetera, picking up the bags is only indicated by the name and the address, not whether you are a homeowner or not. So renters are also eligible for picking up the yard waste bags.
thank you.
Thank you. Director Campbell, thank you very much for this report and update.
You're very welcome.
That will take us to reports of committees of council. This meeting was held on September 5th, 2023. We'll go down through the committees, beginning with Public Safety. Councilor Diaz.
Thank you so much. The resolution that we discussed with the Safety Committee at our previous meeting has to do with the resolution and appointment of Christopher DeLong as a City Council Emergency Management Coordinator, and that will be brought up at the legislative agenda later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Public Works Committee, Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. The Public Works Committee did meet in which we discussed, there was one item on the agenda, and that's Resolution 59, 2023, which will be discussed later in the agenda, and that's authorizing a grant application for replacement of lead water service lines.
Thank you. Economic Development Committee, that's Councilor Arroyo. In his place, I will mention that the Economic Development Committee did not meet. Finance Committee, Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee did meet where we heard a budget presentation from the Lancaster Public Library, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ahmed. Community Planning would be Councilor Craig. In her place, I will mention that the Community Planning Committee did meet. They discussed two items. Both will be on the agenda later this evening. One is for an item for the Heritage Conservation District for 227 West James Street, which we had a lengthy discussion and presentation on at that meeting. And the second was a sewer plan module for a property on Manheim Pike. And both of those items, again, will come up in our meeting later in this agenda. Then that concludes Community Planning. Personnel Committee, Councilor Kalixt.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee did meet on Tuesday, September 5th, and review nominations for appointment to the Board of Plumbing Examiners, the Board of Health, and the Zoning Hearing Board. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kalixt. We'll now move into our legislative agenda, where the first item are those nominations for appointment. Councilor Kalixt.
Thank you, Madam President. Now I make a motion to reappoint Stephen Schwenger, Chad Walton, Barry Soder, and Sean Way to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a one-year term ending September 12, 2024. And I also move to appoint Trent Myers to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a one-year term ending September 12, 2024, and Jessica Amy to the Board of Health to complete an unfinished term until March 31st, 2025.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any council comments on the appointments or reappointments? Hearing none, comments from the public. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz. Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. Thank you very much, Councilor Cleeks. The next item on our legislative agenda, item B, is Heritage Conservation and Historic Districts. We have several of those applications. Mr. Harris, would you please read them into the record?
Yes, Madam President. The first is New Person Ministries, owner of 618 South Prince Street, and they propose demolition of a modern cement block warehouse to allow new construction on the site. The second is New Person Ministries, owner of 618 North Prince Street, proposing construction of a new two-story residential building, and both of those applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Commission. The next is Amoli Commercial LLC, owner of 227 West James Street. They propose demolition of a three-story brick residential building to be replaced by a neighborhood garden. That application was recommended for denial by the Historical Commission. Next is BLM Real Estate LLC, owner of 415 Church Street, and they request replacement of 5 wooden windows on the building's facade. And last is GNW Real Estate, owner of 224 to 226 East Marion Street. They request alterations of the windows, doors, and balcony of the building facade. And both of those applications were recommended for approval by the Historical Architectural Review Board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. In the absence of Councilor Craig, I'll take these items, and I would like to take items A and B together first, as they are relating to the same property. I'll hear a motion on items A and B.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. These are, again, for 618 South Prince Street, proposed demolition of a warehouse building and allowing new construction. And the item B is actually the proposed new construction of a two-story residential building. Are any of the applicants for 618 South Prince Street here this evening? Would you like to say a few words to the council? No. Okay. Not a problem. These items were recommended for approval by the Historical Commission. I'll take any council comments on the motion.
Council President.
Councilor Walsh.
I do have a question for the owners of 618 South Prince. It says that you're looking for new construction on the site of a two-story residential building. I was just wondering if that'll be a single or multi-family residence?
Sorry, our builder isn't here, so it's actually on the first floor, we're putting some office space. On the second floor, we're putting residences. So New Person Ministries, we work with men coming out of prison. We own 620, and so it's kind of a continuation of what we're doing over there, but we're looking at a long-term program there, so it's not a short-term halfway house. It's kind of a longer program.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
And sir, could you state your name for the record of the meeting?
Sorry, I'm Jordan Kaufman. I'm the Executive Director of New Person Ministries.
Thank you very much. Any further council comments on the motion?
I just wanted to make a quick comment, President.
Councilor Diaz?
I want to thank you for what you're doing with the ministry and those that are in need. My aunt years ago used to do the same. She used to bring people in and help them to get back on their feet and out to work on their own.
My pleasure.
Comments from the public on the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. We'll now move to item C, which we can take separately in this instance. That's the 227 West James Street property, proposed demolition of a three-story brick residential building. We saw a presentation, we've seen several presentations on this item, and at this time, I would like to make a motion for the approval of the application to demolish the building at 227 West James Street, subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, the applicant will develop a formal parking plan with neighbors of the 200 block of West James Street for use of the Lombardo's parking lot during non-business hours. Condition 2, the applicant will commit to construct and maintain a public community garden on the lot at their sole expense, including A, obtaining all necessary permits and approvals, including but not limited to a special exception to the zoning code for use of the site as a public garden, B, determining the set hours of the space and providing for its regular maintenance, security, and ongoing capital improvements, C, incorporating elements of the existing cornice of 227 West James Street into the entryway for the community garden. And condition 3, the applicant will commit to work with the city's public art and urban design program and public art advisory board to develop a plan and display public art sculptures on a temporary rotating basis or a permanent basis at the sole expense of the applicant. These conditions will comply with city zoning ordinance and meet the needs of the applicant and the desires of the neighbors. Following the satisfaction of these conditions, the applicant will be granted a certificate of appropriateness for this application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilors, I did reach out to you and provide that in writing prior to the meeting, so this is not the first you're seeing that. I will take any council comments on the motion.
I do have a comment, President.
Councilor Diaz.
The application was recommended for denial by the Historical Commission, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is just asking that you basically take James Street's proposal with the exception of that you just read, is that correct?
That's correct. This would grant them the certificate of appropriateness that the council has the discretion to give, but give them these conditions of getting that certificate. They must complete these steps to receive that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from council? Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. Just one question I have around these conditions is, I guess my concern is, what is the timeline for demolition and having these all come to fruition? And then what are the fail-safes that we have in place so that once demolition does occur, if the applicant does not work with the public art design program or the public art advisory board, or does not build the public garden, how do we prepare ourselves for that? Because once it's demolished, it's not like we can undemolish it.
Sure. I will invite up Director Delfs and/or Douglas Smith, the Chief Planner of the city, to address the ways that we can enforce these conditions, if you have something to say on that. I'll also note that there was some conditions proposed by the applicant at the previous meeting, and these are not exactly as proposed, but I did seek some guidance from city planning just to make sure that we did have a mechanism to enforce.
Thank you, Council President, Council Mayor. So I'm thinking on my feet here, just since this is the first time I'm hearing all of those conditions together. I think that some of those are more easily addressed than others. So I'll buy myself a little time and I'll give you the first part of the answer. Some of those applications or approvals could be requested upfront as a condition of issuing a building permit. For instance, having some kind of site design of that garden and an application into the Stormwater Bureau for any site disturbance or additional impervious that's being added. Having the design of that park, if it's incorporating artistic elements like the cornice, having that reviewed by staff in advance. The zoning special exception certainly that you mentioned. Any other setback reviews for the design of that park. If there's public art, that would have to adhere to the setbacks as well. So I think those pieces are the ones that can be addressed more easily in advance of providing the demo permit. Might have some additional questions around the public art piece and programming, and those are sort of the things that are a little bit harder to pin down prior to demolition and naturally sort of take place after the demolition. So I'm thinking about that right now, but maybe Director Delfs has some reflections as well.
I'll also note that it does state that following the satisfaction of those conditions, the applicant will be granted the certificate of appropriateness. That does include engaging public art and the Public Art Advisory Board before the certificate would be issued. And if I'm correct, there would be no demolition before there'd be a certificate issued. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Council President, that is the direction that I was going as well. I think that makes sense to us. Douglas and I haven't had a chance to talk through it all together. I will say that typically, as part of the land development process, just to draw an analogy, we often do have conditions of approval as part of a land development, the land development approval, which is then ultimately tied to the building permits. So I think in this case, having conditions of the certificate of appropriateness does make sense. Just thinking on the fly here, if there are elements that don't work from the timeline, we could also add a condition that would require further, the creation of a further agreement with the city administration to execute those other pieces.
Thank you.
One question that I have is how to institutionalize into perpetuity these agreements should council vote to proceed in overturning the recommendation from the Historical Commission with those conditions. This is just thinking 10, 15, 20, 50 years out. I'm assuming that there's a process for that, and that may also go to some of the questions from Councilor Walsh.
I'll take a stab at that, Mayor. So there could be a restriction placed on the property, some kind of deed restriction. There are questions around public access that I think would have to be worked out in the programming. I'm not clear yet, I guess, whether this is available to everybody or select property owners, or who gets to access the site and when. Given that there are a lot of details here to work out, there could be I'm not sure what to call it here, but a developer's agreement or a property owner's agreement that the landowner would engage with the city and to hash out some of these details around operations. I think we've flagged a number of the issues here, but if you decide to move forward this evening, leaving that somewhat open-ended to the city's satisfaction that, public safety, health, welfare are being addressed in that agreement, that could be helpful.
Council President, if I may. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Douglas and Director Delfs. So if we did move forward with passing this motion, there would still be a time where all of these details would have to be ironed out between the city and the applicant before demolition would happen.
Correct. And I think, again, we're figuring this out in the moment, but I think where Douglas and I were both going is that we often do have a developer's agreement. Coming back to the mayor's question, I think similarly, there could be a condition for a developer's agreement or an applicant's agreement or property owner's agreement, whatever the right term of art is, to finalize the details of those elements. For example, I think it would include members of the Planning Bureau. I think we would also incorporate Director Campbell and his team as well, just to make sure we understand how this is operating as essentially a public community garden. It would be, the way I view this is, it would be an addition to our public parks and open space network, although it would be managed and maintained entirely by a private property owner. And I think just making sure that we have all those details of the operations buttoned up, we can do that in agreement with the property owner. I assume that they would be amenable to that. It sounds like we're all going in the same direction in terms of the goals, but there's some operational details that we could address through that developer's agreement.
And although it may not have to come to council for approval, would council still be able to see the development agreement before the demolition?
Absolutely, yes, we can share that with you.
That concludes my questions, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cleese.
Thank you, Madam President. It's not a question, it's more a comment. So this agreement or restrictions and I think that they should be forwarded to council in order to be reviewed and voted on before the demolition.
Thank
This
you.
is my comment.
Is that something that you've seen as a precedent for that, Director Dels? Or Mr. Smith or?
Sorry, bear with me just for a moment.
Absolutely.
They would be formal conditions of the certificate of appropriateness. I'm just trying to think through your question, Councilor Cleese, about whether the details would then come back for approval. If you take action on the certificate of appropriateness, that part is complete. One other possibility, so this is the first regular meeting of the month. I think that Councilor Bakay's conditions addressed the vast majority of the issues, but if it would be helpful, we could flesh those out further and bring those back to the next meeting. That is one option. I also do think that you could pass the conditions as is for the certificate of appropriateness and leave it to staff to finalize those pieces. I think we understand as staff where the council wants to end up. Very similar options, just a little bit different.
Go ahead.
The thing is that I'm worried that we pass, if we pass it tonight and the applicant, after the demolition, they don't comply with the motion that President Baker presented, so we don't know what's going to happen. That's why.
Well, Douglas, you're welcome to jump in too. The way I would think about this is that if one of the conditions is a developer's agreement to address those items that you've noted, and that developer's agreement does not happen, that condition has not been satisfied, and they would not be able to get a demolition permit through our department for that to happen.
In addition, I would just add that any demolition permits that are approved in the city of Lancaster require my signature. So they go through several levels of signature as well as my own. And I'm only saying that because it would be completely appropriate for us to share back with council the details of the stipulations that Council President just read, and then to make sure that those conditions are being met. I would also just add that our teams regularly do this around issues related to stormwater, public right-of-way, and so on, and work with properties that both have demolition components as well as new construction. And if at the end of all of that, Councilor Cleese, you would like to make, has there been a motion and a second on this? Yes. Then you may make a motion to amend the resolution as it stands now. Mr. Harris, am I getting this correct? To require a review of the detailed agreement with the property owner before approving the demolition, the certificate of appropriateness specifically. Because remember, there has been demolition that's already been approved of the backs of the buildings. So this is the front parcel. So I'm just trying to lay out options for council.
Yes, I think that I would make a motion to review the agreement before we pass the what?
Certificate of appropriateness.
Yes, exactly. Before we pass the certificate of appropriateness tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend the motion. I just want to make sure that we have captured it correctly. So this would be a fourth condition that the applicant would enter into, are we calling this a developer's agreement with the city of Lancaster?
Yes.
That will be reviewed by city council prior to being signed? Is that correct?
Yes.
I want to make sure that I
correct.
capture the,
Correct.
okay.
And Councilor Cleeks, can I just ask a clarifying question? So then you'd be directing staff to work on that developer's agreement and to finalize any details within that agreement, and then the agreement would come back to council for review?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was the direction to staff.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if I may also just acknowledge that Mr. Davis is here, and do you have any comments as representing the property owner?
Good evening, Mike Davis from Barley Snyder.
Could you please use, yeah.
Good evening, Mike Davis from Barley Snyder on behalf of the applicant. All of the conditions that have been proposed are acceptable to the applicant, and we are more than fine with working through a developer's agreement with city staff and then having that come back before city council for approval before the certificate of appropriateness is issued.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. Just one question for the gentleman representing the applicant.
All right, walk away first.
Sorry. So this development agreement, would supersede any passing off of the property or the land to, through an estate or through selling of the property. This land agreement would, supersede that?
We would make sure that it's a covenant running with the land.
Okay. That was my question.
And that would be part of an agreement that we could write into that. Is that correct, Director Dels? Nodding. Okay, great. Thank you. Further comments from council? We have a motion to amend. Mr. Harris, is this a motion we have a motion and a second to amend. Is there going to be a vote to amend and then a vote as amended?
Yes.
Just to make sure that we're all keeping track at home. Great.
No, I think we're on.
Okay, go ahead.
And to be clear, this would be adding a fourth condition there, that with the applicant to enter into developer's agreement to be drafted and reviewed by city council prior to issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. Correct?
Our motioners and seconders are nodding.
Okay.
So we're voting on the second amendment, not the first one that was proposed by Council President.
We're voting to amend the First Amendment.
Okay.
So this is a motion to amend the First Amendment. Are there any further council comments on the motion to amend the amendment? It's a little complicated. I'll take comments from the public on the motion to amend the amendment. If you can keep track of that, you win a prize. Good evening, sir. If you could begin with your name and block of residence,
Good
please.
evening. My name is Steve Hohenwooder, and I live in the 300 block of North Lime Street. Under most circumstances, we wouldn't necessarily agree with council overriding the Historic Commission, but there are certainly some projects that they approved for demolition in the past that were egregious, and I think some of the reasoning they were using on this one don't pass muster, and I just want to stand up and say I support your decision to allow this demolition to take place. So,
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public on the motion to amend? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Danielle Kepperling, 700 block of North Franklin Street. I do serve on the Historic Commission, but that's not why I'm here tonight. I just wanted to have that out there. I am the Executive Director of the Historic Preservation Trust of Lancaster County, and I understand the reasoning behind this building, but I do worry about the precedent because just based on the development of the property personally, it looks to me like this was the plan all along. And it is, in my reading of the demolition by neglect ordinance of the Heritage Conservation District, it's in direct violation of the ordinance. The ordinance says any deteriorated condition of a building or structure resulting from the failure of an owner to maintain the property in good repair, structurally sound, and reasonably protect it from decay and deterioration shall not be permitted as evidence in support of an application for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition. So I understand the reasoning, but I worry about the precedent that it's setting throughout the city.
Thank you. Further comments from the public on the motion to amend? Ms. Gomez?
Hello. Okay, you got it. My question is, are all councilmen supposed to be present during this approval? Because I know that there's two missing, and Councilor Craig has been absent for the last two in the beginning of his presentation.
Thank you for your question. No, it is not a requirement. We need a quorum, which we do have this evening. A quorum would be 4 councilors, so we are above a quorum for a vote.
Okay. And my second question was out of respect to what, your president? Executive Director, who actually works strenuously to preserve Lancaster City. I think that this agenda that's being pushed is a smack in the wrist. You have multiple homeowners, residents, and one sitting on the right over there whose home is condemned. Clearly, there's nothing wrong. You guys are taking her to court, and this is 2 years in on a condemned property that you can't even lift the condemnation, and she worked strenuously to work on her property, and it's livable and has families, and you guys don't want to lift the ban. But you have someone who purchased the property in 2018 for $184,000 and only did a lead abatement and literally neglected this property. And because, with you nodding your head and you making suggestions, I think this just doesn't look good again. So it's not right to just give someone a smack on the wrist and hold others accountable. I don't think this is fair, and I think this needs to stop. Okay, it really needs to stop. You should not be above your power. You should treat everyone fairly. Listen to the issues of the city, the abandonments, the condemnations that you have in court. It is absurd to give someone a smack in the wrist for neglecting their property and giving them what they want, going above and beyond the Historic Society's rule and saying that you have the power to make a decision like that. You need to rethink your values.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Further comments from the public on the motion to amend the motion?
Gail Grove Scott, 300 block of North Lime Street. I want to say that I have great respect for the Historic Preservation Trust. I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Trust, and I understand that argument about precedent. We might want to consider the precedent that happened back in 2014 through 2017 on the 100 block of West Lemon Street, when the Redevelopment Authority owned 2 houses there, and another house was condemned, and 3 houses that could have been rehabbed were knocked down to make a pocket park that many people argue largely benefited the Lancaster Press building. But you know what? It happened. And I think this is, I'm often told this is a city of non-conforming uses by your zoning and planning department. And I know your planning department actually voted against those 3 houses being knocked down. And to me, that's very similar to what's happening here. But you know what? I think in this case, the council, having thought about this very carefully and heard much conversation about it, I think you're making the right decision here. This is a different situation. Every block has to be looked at separately. And as long as you make sure that in perpetuity, their deed restrictions are attached so that we know that this will be used properly as you designate it in the future for arts and for parks for the community, then I think you're making the right decision. And yes, sometimes it doesn't seem fair, and certainly it seems like the precedent is bad. I was not in favor of those 3 houses being knocked down on West Lemon across from the Alley Cat to benefit that little park at Park. I think this park, the community seems to want it, and I think you're making the right decision. So I know it's a difficult decision.
Thank you very much. Further comments from the public on the motion to amend?
Susie Hoover, 200 block of East King. I was happy to hear her bring up the deed restriction because with the redevelopment authority on some properties sold, they did not put the restrictions in there, and it became a pretty big issue with a number of people who bought the property and people who then bought the property, and they were not aware of the restrictions on that property, and they were kind of punished for that. So just be sure you include that in your motion, that anything you're deciding, it goes into the deed as a restriction. So if the property is ever sold, or partial property, I don't know if this will be 1 deed or 2 deeds, that it will be very legal. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hoover. Any further comments on the motion to amend? Come right on up, please. Good evening, sir.
Hi, my name is Jeff Lawrence. I live on the 200 block of North Cherry Street. My wife and I moved to Lancaster last fall. We love the city. We've been following this issue in the paper quite a bit, not just because we enjoy Lombardo's, but I just want, and I'm not going to go into everything, obviously, because you guys have thought this out and hashed it out and considered it, but I think the changes that are being proposed regarding the park and, the community garden and the art portion of it, I think that's a very positive thing for the city. And from my understanding, even though I think only 3 times has the city council overridden the historical commission, from my understanding, you have the authority to do that. I think it's been well thought out, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. Further comments from the public on the motion to amend? Ms. Gravis.
Yes, I'm just a little baffled why this property in 5 years, the city has not condemned it, just like the city has condemned so many other properties. Why are certain property owners above the law, or why are the same policy and procedures being met? I'm just, it's a travesty that 5 years this property has been let go, uninhabited, and the city has done nothing. Why wasn't this property condemned 5 years ago, from 2018? There's no answer?
I just want to make sure that you have your time. You can continue if you'd like, or we can address your question if that's it, which I'm happy to do so.
My question is not just 227 West James Street. There's other properties just like it that should be condemned, yet the city is turning a blind eye because of power, influence, and profit, obviously.
Thank you, Ms. Gravis. And just to address your question about the condemnation status of the building, we've talked a lot about this over the last several months. The property is currently condemned, is that correct? Or no, it just hasn't, there is something about there's no one living in the building, I can tell you that much. And right now, the condition of the building is such as that the fire department would not enter it. So not a condemnation flag, but it is not inhabited.
Correct, but why wasn't it condemned is the question.
I do not know the answer to that question right at this moment, Ms. Grievous.
Well, can you find out the answer? Because that's a fair question. If other minorities' properties could be easily condemned for minor cosmetic things, and here we have an entire building that is being demolished because of neglect, and yet this property was never questioned, why it was not condemned by the city and building codes? And I have at least 5 other properties in a similar situation. Why are some people being treated differently than others? That's mainly what it comes down to. In 5 years. From 2018, and here we are in 2023. Can you get an answer, please?
I certainly can look into that for
All
you,
right,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public on the motion to amend the motion? Going once, going twice. Hearing none. Mr. Harris, a vote on the motion to amend the motion.
Mr. Ahmed? Aye. Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. The motion to amend the motion has passed. So now the amended motion is on the table. As a reminder, that is the conditions as listed previously, plus the additional condition offered by Councilor Calixte. Any council comments on the original motion that we haven't already covered? Comments from the public on the original motion? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
No.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for working through that. The next items are, we're still under the Heritage Conservation District. Those would be items D and E. Mr. Harris, can you reread them in just to reorient us, and then we can take them together?
Yes, Madam President. BLM Real Estate LLC, owner of 415 Church Street, requests replacement of 5 wooden windows on building facade. And G&W Real Estate, owner of 224-226 East Marion Street, requests alterations of windows, doors, and balcony on the building's facade. And both of those applications are recommended for approval by the Historical Architectural Review Board.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll hear a motion on items D and E.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. These were recommended for approval by the Historical Architectural Review Board. Are any of the applicants for BML Real Estate or G&W Real Estate here this evening and would like to say anything on behalf of the projects? No. Council comments on the motion? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. That will bring us to item C on our agenda this evening, resolutions. We begin with resolution number 59. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the administration to execute a financial assistance application for grant funding on behalf of the city to the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, PennVest, for replacement of lead service lines in the 700 and 800 blocks of 2nd Street and the 200, 300, and 400 blocks of Pearl Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Counselor Walsh, this came through Public Works.
Thank you, Council President. This came before committee last week, and what this resolution does is allows our Department of Public Works to essentially resubmit a grant application. The original application that we approved as council, I think in July, the guidelines for that application has changed, and there are some costs that are no longer applicable. So what Director Campbell discussed during our committee meeting was this, under the new application, new application guidelines, this would allow us to apply only covering costs that are applicable for this in the amount of $872,000 and, I'm sorry, $872,340, and that would be used for the replacement of the lead water service lines in the 700 and 800 block of Second Street and the 200, 300, and 400 blocks of Pearl. I don't have too much to add other than that. Director Campbell, if you would like to add any more, but, all right.
Thank you, Counselor Walsh. And we did discuss this at committee, and it did not change, if I recall, the length of time that the project would take. It did not take away from any of the number of houses that would be affected by this project. It simply just changed the dollar amount of the grant application. Any council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. The next item is Resolution Number 60, 2023. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the raising of a flag on September 15, 2023, in recognition of the Independence Days of several Central American nations, and to acknowledge the contributions of Hispanic immigrants in all aspects of life in the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Just briefly, as you might recall, this resolution allows organizations to sponsor a flag raising at City Hall. The flag raising time is on, I want to make sure I get this correct, Friday, September 15th at 4 p.m. This application, as you may recall, in 2022, an ordinance was passed that required organizations wishing to raise a flag at City Hall to apply in advance 120 days. This was placed on our agenda within that time frame as an exception to allow this flag raising to continue to happen. And I would just encourage any organizations wanting to sponsor a flag raising to please go through the process of applying in a timely manner going forward. Any council comments on this resolution?
I do have a question, President.
Sure. Councilor Diaz.
Is this one flag or is this several flags?
That's a great question. This is being sponsored by, I believe CWS is the sponsor. Milsey, do you have information about the flag or flags that they wish to fly?
One flag.
Mm-hmm. One flag.
And from those flags, what actual,
It's on the resolution.
Bringing that up right now. Flag representing the nations of Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua to be flown at City Hall on September 15th with a backup date of September 16th in case of inclement weather. That's the information that's in the resolution.
so Mexico and Chile is not on there?
Yes, this is the Independence
This is
Day.
related-
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
This is related to independence, right? So we have September 16th, September 18th. So my question is, why is Mexico and Chile not included? Not that I'm making a big thing about it, but if we're talking about independence, I'm curious to know why just those.
So this flag raising was submitted on behalf of Joe Allen, who was here earlier and couldn't attend. And those were the countries, Central America, independent flag raising that he wanted to recognize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Further comments from council on the resolution? From the public?
a
Ms. Gomez?
comment.
Sure.
If it's one individual who's suggesting the flag raising of these specific countries, then Mexico and Chile should be included as well, because we are a nation in all. Like when you talk about independence and you're looking at these flags, you must look at them in total. So I'm just asking for consideration of those two flags to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. And we can certainly let your comments be known to the organizer who applied. Mhm. Further comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Glees.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Beke.
Aye. That brings us to resolution number 63. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the appointment of a Director of the Department of Administrative Services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We spoke about this at our previous committee meeting. Mayor Sirachi, anything to add this evening?
Nothing further to add. I would actually just offer the Finance Committee Chair, Councilor Ahmed, if there's anything that you wanted to offer after you've met with Ms. Campbell and as we were deliberating this.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. Yes, I just want to highly recommend Tina Campbell for the position. I had the pleasure of meeting with her and talking about our shared goals for the future. Director Hopkins leaves some big shoes to fill, and I'm fairly certain that she will work towards the shared goals with city residents in mind, and I look forward to working with her.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Are there any other comments from members of council on the appointment? From the public? Ms. Gomez?
My question is for Mayor. When you mentioned that you went through agencies to find Tina Campbell, can you tell me the two agencies that you had reputation that you searched for employees in that description?
Yes, I do have documentation, and I would be happy to provide that to you.
That would be great, along with the interviews that or the candidates that you interviewed for this position.
I would ask you to please submit your request in writing to Mr. Harris, and that will be reviewed, and we can get back to you the documents that we are able to provide to you.
Will you promise to get back to me in a timely manner?
It will be a review that will be done by our legal team to share those contracts back to you, and they will communicate with you at a time frame in which you can expect those documents.
But you actually interviewed these people for candidacy in terms of this position?
Our entire executive team interviewed the individuals previously, and so yes, there were 7 other people, including me, that conducted interviews for this position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Please do submit that request to Mr. Harris. Any further comments from the public on the appointment? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Glees.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Beke.
Aye. Congratulations, Ms. Campbell, and welcome to the executive position. All right, our next item, resolution number 64. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster appointing Samantha Volrath, 304 East New Street, as an alternate member to the City of Lancaster Zoning Hearing Board for a term beginning immediately and concluding December 31st, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Councilor Cleeks, anything to add on this one?
Yes, Madam President. There isn't much to say about this resolution. It's pretty straightforward. It is a resolution of council appointing Ms. Volrath as an alternate member of the zoning hearing board for a term beginning immediately and concluding in December 31st, 2025. And she's a resident of the city, and she has a background in housing, and her experience and her professionalism will make her a valuable member to the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaliks. We were provided prior to the committee meeting Ms. Volrath's resume and experience, and while not a requirement of the position, she does work in housing and would be an asset to this crucial authority.
And she's here.
Oh, she's here. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I was losing myself there.
Hi, again.
Hi, Director.
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Volrath because it's been a very, very long meeting and she has waited a long time. And I don't know if you realize that she was here or not tonight. So no requirement that she speak, but I just did want to acknowledge her presence and thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you very much. If there's anything you'd like to say, Ms. Volrath, this would be a great time. You've been here this long, and we appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't see you there.
No, that's okay. Good evening, council. I apologize for missing the committee meeting last week where we could have met, but I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And, I believe in inclusive communities, and I know that zoning is a small but important part of that. So I hope to be able to foster that throughout the community. And as an added bonus, my great-grandfather was the mayor of Lancaster in the 60s, so I'm looking forward to being connected to the city and the work that you guys do.
Who was it?
It was George Coe, 62 to 66, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Comments on the resolution from members of council?
Council President,
Councilor Walsh.
I just want to say thank you for your service. I have worked alongside Ms. Volrath as in our careers in housing and your advocacy for the unhoused and preserving and building affordable housing. Having your perspective on that particular board is going to be much needed and much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments on the resolution from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med. Aye. Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. Excuse me. That takes us to resolution number 65. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the appointment of the City of Lancaster's Municipal Emergency Management Coordinator.
I'll hear a motion.
Approve.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Diaz, this is through Public Safety.
The Public Safety Committee met last week for the approval and appointment for the Deputy Fire Chief, Christopher DeLong, as City Emergency Management Coordinator. This was basically proposed by the mayor and, of course, the advice of City Council. The appointment adjusted will be approved by the Governor's Office of Pennsylvania. Christopher Long will to serve until the appointment and qualification of his successor, and I can just move this a little longer to the mayor if she wants to add anything to that.
Just to have council have an opportunity to meet Deputy Chief DeLong, who's here tonight, along with Chief Hutchinson. He was unable to attend our committee meetings, but is here tonight, and maybe could provide the briefest of overviews of the work, recognizing that he'll be bringing back to council a more comprehensive review of the work that he has just begun since his promotion on July the 1st.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief, welcome. And thank you for being here.
Good evening. I'm busy. The short answer is that I'm working very diligently to revise our emergency operations plan so that we can prepare for any and all emergencies that come our way, so we can protect the citizens and the stakeholders inside the city.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief, and we appreciate that work. And it's notable that this position was previously held by someone who would otherwise not be a staff member to the city, and it seems could not dive this deep into emergency planning and preparedness, which I think is incredibly important to the safety and welfare of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just say we appreciate Jean Duncan's service to the city and in a part-time role, and that having an internal person such as Deputy Chief DeLong to coordinate across the bureaus, especially Department of Public Works and Public Safety, as well as neighborhood engagement, our communications teams, et cetera, to be able to develop more robust planning. But in addition to planning, Deputy Chief DeLong is also doing a considerable amount of staff training and working also with external agencies around our security protocols and safety for our employees as well as the residents of the city of Lancaster.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sirachi. Any comments from members of council on the resolution?
Thank you for your service. Thank you.
From the public? You're done. Thank you very much. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye.
That concludes the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you very much. And lastly, but not leastly. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Keep me straight. Congratulations. And lastly, resolution number 66. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
I'll hear a motion.
Motion to.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This resolution came through the Community Planning Committee, and Councilor Craigstead, I will gladly just briefly address what it covers. We've done a number of these sewage facilities plans in the past. They are one of the first steps for land development, so there's not a lot of other approvals and things that are in place at this time for the project. But we were presented with information that there is capacity in the system for development on this property. Mr. Smith, is there anything that you want to add about this particular project or sewage modules in general? Thank you. I'll take any other council comments on the resolution. From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Ms. Walsh.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. That concludes our legislative agenda this evening. We will now move to our second public comment period. This is open for comment about any issues that were not previously on the agenda this evening. Again, duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And please begin with your name and block of residence for the record. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening? Going once, and twice. Hearing none, I'll close public comment and move to the report of the mayor. Mayor Sirachi.
Thank you, Council President. My report is brief tonight. As you know, ensuring public safety in our city is paramount, and tonight I'm pleased to share recent promotions within the fire and police bureaus with you. The police bureau promotions are as follows. Achieving the rank of lieutenant are Matt Odenthal, Tom Cole, and Steve Reich. Achieving the rank of sergeant are Adam Fleury, Jessica Higgins, and Bill Hamby. The fire bureau promotions are as follows. Chris DeLong, who you just met, promoted to Deputy Chief Emergency Management Coordinator. Samara Rudolph, promoted to captain, and Matt Geisbert and Ryan Conklin were promoted to lieutenant. Promoting professional development, promotions internally, and the professional development that comes along is crucial for both our firefighters and police officers, and really all of our city employees. But I would say that the ladder for promotions and the process for promotions is much more delineated within those areas of service. Their continuous self-improvement shows a commitment to the residents we serve and strengthens our entire organization. And I ask council and the public to join me in celebrating these milestones. And if you have a minute and could send a quick email to congratulate these folks on their promotions, I'm sure that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sirachi, and congratulations to all the members of Chief, your department who are receiving promotions. Thank you. Next is the report of President of Council, of which I do not have one this evening. Next would be council comments. Are there any council comments at this time?
Yes, Mr. President. I would like
Councilor
to
Diaz.
know, in regards to some of the percentage or numbers of the police that have left Lancaster. So it sounds like we're down 40 police officers, 30 that we were never actually hired, and 10 that have already left. Is that correct?
As the public safety chair, I'd encourage you to be in direct contact with the chief. He would be happy to provide you information about our current staffing levels, but it is that information in terms of 10 being hired and 10 left does not sound accurate to me.
I did contact him, and I still haven't received a response, so thank you.
He was out of town, and he has returned to the office, and he will be out of town the next 2 days. Feel free to reach out with him again. I don't know when you sent that email, but I do know that he will respond.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Any further council comments this evening? Hearing none and have concluded our agenda this evening, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.